Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. So inshallah today we'll finish the part that talks about combining two prayers together, the Dhuhr and Asr and Maghrib and Isha. Dhuhr and Asr can be combined together, and Maghrib and Isha, the Maghrib and Isha, the sunset and the night prayer can be also combined. And we read the ahadith, the sayings of the Prophet ﷺ about this matter last time. Now, briefly we talked about how the different Imams viewed these texts, and we mentioned that Imam Abu Hanifa radiallahu anhu felt that you cannot combine salawat except where? Do you remember? Imam Abu Hanifa. Yeah, Muzdalifah and Arafah. That's the only situation he allows for that. In Arafah, they combine Dhuhr and Asr together. Then they go to Muzdalifah, they do Maghrib and Isha. He only allowed for that. Other than this, if you're traveling, you have to do the Salah on time. If you're sick, you have to do Salah on time, so on. Okay? Breastfeeding, Salah on time. Rain, weather conditions, Salah on time. Just for you to know that, okay? But we will talk about which opinion seems to go, which opinion seems to conform the best with the text. Imam Malik said that you're allowed to do the Jama', of course, in Muzdalifah and Arafah. All of them actually agreed on this part. Because this is something that was witnessed by hundreds of people in Hajj of the Prophet ﷺ. They witnessed that and everybody narrated it. It became certain. And Imam Abu Hanifa, as I mentioned to you before, he only takes from the hadith what he feels to be certain or close to that. Okay? He does not change what the original state of anything from its original state unless he has a certain hadith, for instance. But otherwise, the number one certainty is the Quran, of course. The hadith come in the second degree, but not all the hadith, of course, as we all know. And we shouldn't be afraid to say that, because even the scholars of hadith, they have graded the hadith in different levels: the mutawatir and mashhur, ahad, da'if, munkar. So even the scholars of hadith don't take not everybody who tells us the Prophet ﷺ said so and so, we take it. We don't go by that. Even scholars of hadith don't take that. So since everybody knows that this is what the Prophet ﷺ did in Muzdalifah and Arafah, nobody disagreed on this part, but they disagreed on other things. For instance, Imam Malik allowed for it as well in traveling, but only if, as I mentioned, if there's some kind of urgency, you need to reach the destination and you cannot stop or something like this. But this also doesn't really conform with the hadith very clearly. And even scholars say, for instance, Ibn Abdul Barr, and I believe he is Maliki, he says, when he talked about the hadith Ibn Umar, إِذَا جَدَّ بِهِ السَّيْرِ, one hadith narrated by Ibn Umar, he said, Prophet ﷺ, he used to combine Maghrib and Isha when there's some kind of urgency in the travel. He says, but no, other hadith indicate that he just combined Maghrib and Isha or Dhuhr and Asr without some kind of urgency in travel. So,
not traveling.
Sorry?
Not traveling.
No, traveling. No.
Okay.
Both are traveling, but sometimes you have to get to a certain destination very fast, or you cannot stop in the middle of the way to pray. So Imam Malik says that only if there's a reason during traveling, that not just a mere traveling, there has to be some other difficulty on top of that in traveling to allow you to do the combining. Okay, that such as reaching a destination or cannot stop or something like this, or you're afraid or something. But no, the other hadith, for instance, there's a hadith Mu'adh ibn Jabal, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam جمع بين الصلاتين في سفر إلى تبوك نازلا غير سائر. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam combined salat when he was in Tabuk, northern part of Arabia, while he was residing. Like he stopped there and he wasn't traveling. He wasn't in the midst of traveling. He already reached the destination. Also he did combining the salah نازلا غير سائر. He was already residing. He wasn't in the process of traveling. Okay, so we can understand that combining can be done just for mere traveling, and it doesn't have to be some kind of hardship on top of that. It doesn't have to be. Now, and one more thing here is that combining the salah, we said about the qasr, shortening the salah, you have to be already on the trip, okay? But combining could be different, because sometimes you know that you really cannot stop. You're going from here to Calgary and it's maybe in the winter, and you know that you're leaving after Dhuhr, but you might not reach until Maghrib. And there's no place to pray in the middle. So you can actually combine before you leave. So that's different from a qasr. But then you combine the full salah. You do the Dhuhr 4 rakat and the Asr 4 rakat, but you're allowed to combine it. So combining is more wide. The reasons that allow us to combine the salah are more varied than just traveling. There's many other reasons, such as hardship, difficulty, even when you are residing. Such as we gave examples of this last time, such as somebody who is sick, for instance, somebody who has salas, like incontinence. The best for that person who has incontinence to try to delay the prayer, the previous prayer, almost till its time goes out. He does the wudu, prays this salah, and then the time of the other salah comes in, and then he prays it. This is the best. This is called Jama' Suri. It's not total combining, but it's close to combining the salah. But he still did the first salah in its time before time ends, and then the next salah, like maybe 10 minutes, just like we do the Dhuhr, the Jum'ah and Asr here, okay? You do the salah on time, and then you go al-mustahada, also women who have, bleeding, istihada, all the time during, outside of their menstrual cycle, they still have blood coming. They can do that, okay? They can wait till the very end. This is called Jama' Suri, okay? But some people are really sick and they can't even do that, They can't wait for too long. Those people are allowed to combine. Breastfeeding women, we said, people who are at work who worry about their livelihood, if they had to pray right on time. Also, Madhab al-Hanbali, according to the scholars of the Madhab Imam Ahmad, they allowed for that. And that goes with the hadith of Ibn Abbas, in which the Prophet ﷺ combined Dhuhr and Asr, Maghrib and Isha, while in Medina, and it wasn't raining, and there was no fear, and of course they were not traveling, okay? So you can use that hadith at times of need to combine the salah. Now, combining for rain, most scholars feel that it's allowed for Maghrib and Isha, but not a big number of scholars allow it for Dhuhr and Asr. Because they say combining salah for rain is only if there's some kind of difficulty, because at night it's more difficult to go to the masjid, and they only allowed it, most of them allowed it only for people who have to go to the masjid, so as not to miss on doing the Isha in Jama'ah. So they allowed if the rain is heavy and it's dark, so Maghrib and Isha, and it's difficult to go back and forth between Maghrib and Isha. But for light rain, no. So for moderate weather conditions, it's not allowed, but for extreme, and you can even rih, extreme wind as well, not just the rain. So extreme weather conditions in general usually apply if it's dark, but if it applied even during the daytime, it's allowed as well, going with the hadith of Ibn Abbas, in which Prophet ﷺ combined for any difficulty. So the general rule is that the hadith of Ibn Abbas shows us as any kind of difficulty that will not allow us to do the salah on time, but it's real difficulty, and we shouldn't really make this like an excuse not to pray the salah on time. But if we find it,
weather was extreme at that time, they had like not a proper house, but now I think so everything is so solid that you can.
Yes, nowadays it's easier, but still, even with nowadays, there is some weather conditions, even with the car and everything else, might be difficult. Everybody has to, weigh their own condition and see if it's difficult or not. Let's say even hurricanes happen nowadays. Even if you have a car, it's not that easy. Extreme weather, extreme winter storm, snowstorm, visibility in the car could be difficult as well. Icy roads. There are so many conditions that still apply even with the advancement in transportation.
So in some locations during Ramadan, the Ramadan fall around maybe summer. And we know that we normally pray Isha late. I understand that some parts of Central Abada or Northern Abada, they combine Maghrib and Isha.
Yeah, maybe they find it difficult. Yes, of course. I mean, obviously they found it difficult to do. We don't do this here. We try to do them all both on time. But in the very extreme north, some people find it difficult to wait for Isha. It's like almost 12 midnight. And then the Fajr is like 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, yani. So it's reasonable. What they're doing is reasonable. And of course, they must have fatwa on this. Even in those extreme conditions, Muhammad, sit down. Sit. Even those extreme conditions, some people even allowed for iftar, like the iftar to go with the timing, the average timing of any other country. So it could be even before Maghrib and they're doing the iftar. Some people, some scholars allowed for that, of course. Even the iftar and Maghrib, because they say this is extreme, like to have the Maghrib close to 11 o'clock or something like this, or 10:30 or 11 o'clock. That is not the average kind. Yeah, it's totally abnormal. But we've never done this here. I mean, we don't feel comfortable doing it. If it's within our means, we'll continue to fast till inshallah till Maghrib time, the proper Maghrib time. But in some places it's so difficult, and they take fatwa like this. They either go by the closest city that has a reasonable timing, or they go by the timing of Mecca, or they go by the average in general.
I'm just hearing this for the first time. I knew we had a conversation. I think when I went to Nigeria in 2016, I was telling the leadership of our group of that situation that we learned in the northern Canada, that some people the suhoor is the same iftar, because the sun sets here and another one rise.
Subhanallah.
Yes, around they call it the city of the midnight sun.
Yes,
so,
yes.
And the Muslims there, they have to fast. They use the timing of
Edmonton, yes.
to fast for one. So
absolutely.
That's the Ustaz was saying, why do you have to do that? They should follow Saudi.
Yes.
I said, is it possible to eat during the broad day? I said, yes.
Yes, they don't. Absolutely. They don't have to follow the time of Edmonton. Like what made Edmonton more sacred than Mecca, for instance? They could have followed any other reasonable time, correct? Because Edmonton also is extreme. You know, they're trying to get the least extreme compared to what they have. But those people, even it's almost like 6 months, it's almost continuous daylight. Yes. Those people, and that's actually based on, this is not based on just human, thought. This is actually based on the hadith in which, when the Prophet ﷺ spoke about the Dajjal, when he comes, he says he stays on earth 40 days. And then he says, but the days are not, what days in Arabic means periods. But he says يوم كشهر ويوم كأسبوع وسائر أيامه كأيامكم هذه, which means, I don't know how this will happen, but he says that one day is as long as a month. One day is as long as a month. But that can happen in the very northern parts, where a day can actually, daytime can last for a long, long time. So they said to him, so what do we do for the salah then? Do we pray just 5 salah in this whole month? Because if it's one day, he said no, you have to basically make your calculation as to what is the average. Like every 24 hours you have to get in 5 salawat. Every 24 hours you have to get in 5 salawat. That's basically how you do it. And for the same reason, scholars thought that for siyam, when fasting becomes, the timing for fasting is no longer clear like this, where there's several months of daylight and several months of darkness, we have to make our calculation. We have to divide the days, 24 hours, and then see what is average of fasting or what is reasonable of fasting, and then do the fasting accordingly. No. Stop here. No.
Merging two salah, right? Our Pakistan and India, our people just emphasize on the awal waqt, like namaz prayer, right?
Awal waqt, yes. Where your people, you mean in your country?
Yeah. So
they want to do the salah right in the beginning.
Yeah, probably Zuhur should be between 1 to 1:30 maximum, or you can delay till 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
So that's why merging, how we do merging, because they say then it's after 3, but it's a qaza.
No.
You're in area, it's the Maliki and the Hanafi, we have different timing as well for the prayers.
Yes.
Your Asr time start quite early, our Asr start just probably 2 hours before the sunset.
Yes.
So how do we correlate with those things? Like,
When you combine, the 2 times become 1 time.
Yeah.
For instance, like then the time of Dhuhr, let's say we're going to combine Dhuhr and Asr, then the time for both Salah becomes from the beginning of time of Dhuhr till Maghrib. That then this whole time period you can do both, either salawat, early or late or in the middle, you can do them that way. Maghrib and Isha, you can, once you combine them, then from beginning of Maghrib till the end of time of Isha. End of time of Isha, whether you go by midnight, like some scholars say, or you go all the way to Fajr, which is not preferred, but this whole time becomes time for combining and merging these two prayers. It becomes much wider. Then this clear distinction or the difference in opinion wouldn't apply as to when the time starts for this salah. But yeah, the Hanafi madhab doesn't allow at all for combining anyhow. But as I said, and as we saw in the hadith, it is definitely permissible in traveling and in other situations. And now that those hadith are well documented in multiple sources, we can say for sure that it is something certain, because we can't have all these hadith from different narrators and in the most authentic books, and it's not real. Definitely, this much we know, that definitely there was combining salah in traveling and in other conditions. Now,
I do believe that Islam is a religion of easiness, not that difficult.
absolutely. Absolutely. And the fact that those ahadith didn't reach the level of certainty for Imam Abu Hanifa, then the collection of ahadith and having them so available for people wasn't at his time. You know, he lived in one location in Iraq, and maybe at this time the ahadith that reached him were not as plenty and as well, documented and authenticated like we have them, or what was available to other scholars that came after him, such as Imam Shafi'i and Imam Ahmad. Those hadith were by that time, well documented in books of hadith, easy to refer to. So they came to that conclusion while he was earlier than them. He couldn't come to that kind of conclusion, that it wasn't certain for him that this was allowed. No. Yeah, it was between 100 and 200. He was earlier, one of the earlier Imams. Him and Imam Malik were very early. No. Okay.